Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the channel. I get asked quite a lot, what DAW is the best DAW? What DAW should I pick? DAW being digital audio workstation, so that's just the software that you make music in. There's so many DAWs. There's Ableton, Studio One, FL Studio, Logic, Pro Tools, a gazillion more. There's so many. I can't even list them all. So it's a really good question when people inevitably ask, which DAW should I pick? Which DAW is the best? Is there a best DAW? I thought it was worth chatting about. If you don't know who I am, my name's Rollo. I'm a producer and a mixing engineer. Not that you should know who I am. I make content here about production and mixing, and sometimes kind of advice like this. My work's got millions of streams, and yeah, I make lots of music, so I like to think that I have a decent say at this stuff. So this is all completely off the cuff. I haven't written anything down. I'm just going for a little rant for you today. The best DAW is something that's been fairly debated, I'd like to say. There's a few different angles that people come from. They say certain DAWs are better sounding than other DAWs, and I just don't necessarily agree with that. I think there's some information about pan laws, which is probably beyond both of our understandings and need to understand, but pretty much it's just how volumes change, I think, when panning happens. Doesn't really matter, but that's kind of the only thing that I've found people actually saying with different DAWs. Like, I don't think it's a problem. I think all the DAWs sound pretty similar. Like, there might be subtle differences between DAW A and DAW B, but for the most part, I think it's all compensated one way or another. The fact you've got hit records coming out of Pro Tools, hit records coming out of Logic, hit records coming out of FL, and sometimes they're recorded and mixed and produced within one of those. So, someone might do a song in FL. Sometimes the song is produced in FL and then it's recorded in Logic and then it's mixed in Ableton or mixed in Pro Tools. The fact that there's so much cross-pollination between different DAWs kind of just says, like, it doesn't really matter. So I think the best thing to think about when you're looking at a DAW is really, what do you need out of it? What are you planning on doing? Different DAWs do have different strengths. Like, I think they all kind of sound the same, more or less. I think they have different strengths and abilities. For instance, I think FL is fantastic for producing certain types of music. I know if you use FL, you're gonna jump in the comments and be like, "Well, it's good for recording." Like, it's not. It's really not. I mean, it's not bad for recording. It's just basic. From my understanding, I don't use FL. I've just watched from a distance, but it just doesn't seem like it's particularly comprehensive. Logic is getting better. I think Studio One's really good for recording. Pro Tools is arguably the best for recording. It's the most that's what they've used for decades and decades. They've used it for a long time, and that's been the industry standard. So for recording, Pro Tools is probably your best bet, and then there's kind of a tier of other DAWs. I use Studio One. I think it's great for recording. I think it's super intuitive and just very fast paced. A lot of people like Ableton and Logic for recording. I think those are probably your best contenders. There's obviously others. As far as ease of recording goes, I think that's a good list to look at. Production-wise, FL or Ableton, I think they might be the best ones. They are fast. The list of tools you get is just crazy. Ableton looks insane. I used Ableton for a short stint, and it was great. At this point in time, I'm too far gone in Studio One, but Ableton, awesome for production. FL Studio is fantastic as well. The workflow, it just seems very quick. Logic as well, and Logic's cheap as heck, so that's definitely a massive plus for Logic. Mixing wise, kind of the same thing. Pro Tools is probably the best, but they're all pretty decent. Now this is all kind of I'm not really saying anything here, right? Oh, thanks Nick, wow, that was very insightful. Point being is that they're all pretty good. The thing that I would mostly think about, aside from okay, I'm only going to be recording bands, you should probably use Pro Tools. If you're only going to be producing trap beats, get FL. If they're kind of in between, I reckon Logic, Studio One, or Ableton are probably they're kind of in my opinion anyway, they're the best ones for the most versatile uses: production, recording, mixing. I think those three are the top tier. Pro Tools for production just seems a bit antiquated. It's a little bit slow. It's a bit hard to do things. Again, from the outside, I don't use Pro Tools. I've dabbled with Pro Tools, but it's just a little bit of a headache. When I have an idea, I just want to be able to whip up you know, the MIDI instrument and just go. That seems like there's a few more steps involved when you're using Pro Tools. So just my opinion there. I think the most important thing if you're getting into it and you're trying to figure out what DAW you should use is probably just your budget. If you've got Mac, I mean, Logic is so cheap compared to all of the others. If you've got a Mac and you have $300 or however much it is, just get Logic. That'll be fine. You'll be fine with Logic. There's so much like depth to it. Their tools are kind of like on the cutting edge with AI stuff. Like, it's great. If you want to be existing in the land of like faster looping ability and kind of moving quickly, I would say Ableton's probably a good bet. It's certainly a bit more expensive, but their like whole user base with their Max for Live stuff is just awesome. Like, so good. So much innovations kind of coming out of there with people creating their own plugins and own utilities and stuff. And I just think like that integration between Ableton and Max for Live is just sick. Like, I wish I had that in Studio One. I think if you're looking for kind of a middle ground between Ableton and Logic, Studio One's a good bet. Like, to me, kind of functionally, it exists in that middle where it's kind of like Logic, kind of like Ableton. I mean, I'm obviously biased because I use it, but I think price-wise as well, it's kind of in the middle of the two, so it's super good in that sense. I think it's like fast workflow, good recording, and it sounds good. In terms of tools and stuff, like, I don't think it's as good as the others. Ableton's probably got the best like software instruments and effects. Like, Studio One mixing effects are pretty good. Logic mixing effects are good as well. So yeah, I think the point of this video is it doesn't really matter. Just pick your budget and then just learn it. So don't pick an obscure DAW that has no learning base, because like that's just not going to benefit you at all. So many videos are online, especially for Ableton and Logic. I think Studio One we're trying to populate kind of more now, but yeah, Ableton and Logic, that's the way to go, I reckon, in my opinion. I personally have these moments myself where I'm like, oh, I'd like to change DAW because, I don't know, I'm getting bored, or I just feel like there's greener grass on another field. But at some point in time, you kind of walk far enough down a path. All of my shortcuts are just for Studio One. All of my workflows are for Studio One. It's just to learn another piece of software, like another integral part of software. It's just gonna take too long for me to start like being able to be productive, which kind of feels like a defeatist mentality, but like to some extent I think it's true. I think you just pick one, you learn it really well, and you just deep dive, and eventually like you're just good enough that it doesn't really matter. Like, you compensate for the flaws of the DAW. So if you've already got one, don't worry about it, just like stick to it. They're all probably fine unless they get discontinued, but I would imagine most of the major DAWs probably won't, because like they've got pretty big user bases, so they've got money to not go under, if that makes sense. But yeah, just pick one, learn it, get good at it. If you use Studio One, I make tons of content for Studio One, but as I said, tons of videos for like the majors. So like, yeah, I hope this has been helpful. It's probably not, it's just a ramble. I don't even know why I made this video, but that's just my thoughts. Hit like, hit subscribe, and turn on the notification bell if you did find it helpful. There's some free presets for Studio One and Logic linked below. You can also get my free plugin called the Bean Machine, which is a load of but it's kind of fun. It's like a fun load of And if you need a producer or a mixing engineer, you can go check out some of my work linked below as well. Have a good one. I'll catch you later.